Today we celebrate the 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time. A few days ago, one of my nephews turned 7. So I sent the family a text message saying, "Happy birthday, happy age of reason." The boy's mother, my sister-in-law, replied saying, "Maybe the age of reason is kicking in because my son had his birthday cake. He made a wish, and his wish was that he could be nicer to his sisters." And I was very impressed. Out of all the things that he could have wished for in the whole world, the boy wished that he could be nicer to his sisters. Maybe he did it out of some survival instinct because he's got 3 sisters. Maybe he's finally realized that his own survival might depend on him being able to get along with his sisters. But of course, more likely, what the boy desired was to be a good person, to be a good brother, to be someone that he himself could be proud of. And that is a noble desire to have. It's a noble desire to have, not just for a boy of 7 years of age, but for anybody. The question is, what do we desire? What do we desire? Because what we desire defines what kind of relationship we have with Jesus. And what kind of relationship we have with Jesus, in turn, crystallizes what we truly desire. In the gospel today, something happened which exposed what the disciples desired. We are told that they were arguing on the road. They were arguing on the road about which of them was the greatest. In other words, the disciples desired things like power, status, and prestige. Yes, they loved Jesus in some sincere way, but they still couldn't help but desire worldly rewards rather than heavenly rewards. As I said, what we desire defines our relationship with Jesus. So it was no wonder that the disciples had no idea what Jesus was talking about when he shared with them something important. When he told them that he was going to suffer, die, and then rise from the dead. The disciples couldn't understand what Jesus was talking about. They were afraid to understand it because their hearts were elsewhere. Their hearts were in the wrong place. One of the beautiful things about the Christian faith is the fact that it is so concrete and yet so infinite in its meaning. The Christian faith is so concrete. At the heart of Christianity is the fact that Jesus, a historical figure, died and rose from the dead, not just in spirit, but also in his body. What could get more concrete than that? And yet the meaning of the cross and resurrection of Jesus is infinite. It is profound without limit. And the depth of the meaning depends on what kind of relationship we have with Jesus. And as I said, what kind of relationship we have with Jesus is defined by what we desire. So a society that is governed by selfish desires will find little or no meaning in the death and resurrection of Jesus. As a matter of fact, such a society will want to get rid of the cross. They will laugh at the resurrection. But a society that is humble, a society which is sincerely aspiring to things that are true, good, and beautiful, will find transformative power in the Paschal mystery, the death and resurrection of Jesus. The other day, I was able to join in a Zoom conference, and the conference was on the topic of fatherhood. And one of the guest speakers there was a man named Danny Abdallah. Danny Abdallah is the father of the children who were tragically killed last year when they were hit by a drunk driver. And Danny spoke about a broken heart. A broken heart. How could he not? Because not a day goes by when he's not reminded of the pain of missing his children. But then he said that he and his wife were learning to love with a broken heart. They were learning to love with a broken heart. In other words, a broken heart is not necessarily an obstacle to love. In faith, a broken heart becomes a means to an even greater love, an even greater love. Danny then shared a story that stuck with me. He said that recently he watched a movie with his family, and he still has 3 children who are alive. So he watched with them a Christmas movie which had Santa Claus in it. So he asked his children, if you could ask Santa Claus for anything, what would you ask for? As children do, they came up with a list of items. But this time, he turned to his wife and asked her, what about you, Layla? What would you ask for? She gently looked at him and said, you know what I would ask for. At that moment, Danny was reminded of the fact that he and his wife were carrying the same cross. They were carrying the same heavy cross. And in a surprising kind of way, he realized that he was glad that they were carrying this cross. He was glad that they were carrying this cross so that his children did not have to carry it. He said it was bad enough that the children had to lose their siblings. He did not want them to feel like they lost their father and mother as well. So he was glad to be carrying this cross because it allowed him to love his family even more. He then went on to say that suffering is a gift. Suffering is a gift. What a strange statement to make. It makes no sense to anyone who desires worldly rewards. But for those who desire what Jesus himself desired on the way of the cross, for those who desire to love, the statement that suffering is a gift begins to make far more sense, because they see that suffering becomes a means by which the fire of God's love becomes present in our world. Suffering in faith becomes a means by which the fire of God's love becomes present in our world. So these people desire suffering, not for its own sake, but for the sake of others. As Jesus said, if anyone wants to be first, he must make himself last of all and servant of all. God bless you. I wish all of you a very peaceful day and a meaningful week.